Do you all remember this guy? I talked about him literally a couple of weeks ago. This is Robert Morris. He is a megachurch pastor at Gateway Church. Where was that? Gateway Church. I think it's in Texas. I forgot. Yeah, Dallas, Texas. But basically, the reason we talked about this guy not that long ago is this is a pastor who helped Donald Trump get elected. He is Donald Trump in 2016. He released a list of his evangelical executive advisory board, and they were like almost all white male Christians who would be guiding him. Well, Robert Morris was on that list. Robert Morris is a guy who says prayers can cure infertility. That's not how it works. He says it's scientifically impossible to be an atheist. He says trans people are a threat to children. Keep that one in mind for a second. And Trump even visited this guy's church in 2020 to talk about race relations and the economy. Yikes. But that's how close this guy was to Donald Trump, and that's how powerful he was as an evangelical Christian leader. And the reason I talked about him, and I'll just include a link below if you want to hear the guy's full story, is that a couple of years ago, this guy, Robert Morris, was accused by a woman who said, this guy sexually abused me when I was a little girl. And she said, I was only 12 years old when he started abusing me. It lasted several years. And now she said she's much older. She has a sense of, right and wrong, and like, oh, what he did to me wasn't just wrong, it was illegal. And she wanted to make that public. One of the interesting things about that story is she said she actually tried to make a thing of this in 2005. She wanted to file a civil lawsuit against Robert Morris. And Robert Morris's attorney said, well, first of all, it was your fault because you were being, quote, flirtatious. She was 12 at the time. And also in that civil lawsuit, she asked him for $50,000. And he said, no, we're not doing that. We will give you $25,000, but only if you sign a non-disclosure agreement and never talk about this again. And she said, hell no, didn't sign it. And then more recently, she started talking about this case publicly. And what happened after all of that? Because the incidents that she brought up happened in the state of Oklahoma, Oklahoma's Attorney General, Gentner Drummond, the guy who's weirdly okay with church-state separation, relatively speaking, he decided to go after this guy. He said the statute of limitations has not expired because we only learned about this now or whatever. And the reason I talked about Robert Morris a couple of weeks ago is because he was finally indicted on 5 counts of basically sexually abusing a child. And again, I went through all the details of that last time, so I won't rehash all of that right now, but it was very disturbing. So where are we at right now with this dude? He's made 1 court appearance. He is set to appear in court again in September. September 4th is his next court date. And keep in mind, even 1 charge of sexually abusing a child, that could be punishable with 20 years in prison. This guy has 5 charges of that stuff. So he may spend the rest of his life behind bars, but there is a long legal process before that's a done deal. It is possible he is allowed to avoid jail time altogether if there are no other, incidents like this. Plenty of white evangelical leaders have escaped serious consequences for their crimes. And I'm sure his lawyers are going to argue, come on, he's a good Christian man. Why would you want to punish him? But in the meantime, and this was first posted, I believe, by the Roy's Report, which is a Christian website, there is a lawsuit Robert Morris filed against the church because he's apparently demanding that the church pay him his retirement package. And because this lawsuit goes into details about the retirement package, we get to know what his retirement package is. We get a copy of the contract, and I'm going to show you what this lawsuit actually says. Check this out right here. Here we go. This is a lawsuit. Gateway Church is suing Robert Morris, and they're basically saying, we don't want to go through the arbitration he wants. We need a secular court to step in. But check this out. Shortly after his resignation, because, he did a thing with a child, Morris requested that Gateway pay him $1 million and fully fund his retirement to the tune of $600,000 to $800,000 per year for the rest of his and his wife's lives. And the church said no, because you broke the contract, and also you're not sorry about any of this. Unbelievable. This guy wants the church to give him $1 million on top of $600,000 to $800,000 a year for the rest of his life. What the hell is going on here? He says, that's the contract I signed, and so you have to obey the contract. Turns out, being a pastor with no ethics is such a good job if you can get it, and I encourage all of you to go get that job. But basically, Gateway's like, we're not giving you anything because in our contract, it says you don't get these retirement benefits if you resign or if you're fired due to certain immoral or criminal conduct. And one of the things they say here, look at this footnote, which made me laugh. And I know none of this is funny, but look at this footnote right here. Those problems, like that you could be fired for, those problems include the fact that Morris's agreement with Gateway preclude him from future retirement benefits if he resigns or is terminated due to certain immoral or criminal conduct. Gateway believes that Morris's resignation based on child sex crimes plainly fits within that category. Like, yeah, we think you did something immoral, so, we're not going to pay you the money. They said they were willing to work with him to resolve some of these issues before they learned the specifics of what he did. But the fact that he was so unapologetic made them not want to work with him at all. And so the reason this is even in court is because Morris says when there is a contract dispute, we have already agreed to go through Christian arbitration, like some faith-based ministry that handles arbitration and settles this. That way we don't have to do it in front of the courts and the public. We could do it privately with Jesus. But the company that he says we got to work with, the church says that's not the company we agreed to a long time ago. And so they're now going to the actual courts saying, we need you to put a stop to this fake arbitration that we don't want any part of. And that's why we know all this stuff. So while the specifics of the argument can get tedious, and I don't know enough about contract law to tell you who's right and who's wrong, though I feel like the church is in the right to say we don't have to give this guy any money because look at what he did. But it's the audacity of his demands that's getting attention. This guy was getting paid way too much to begin with, and now he's demanding that the church give him what was promised to him in perpetuity, even though the only reason he lost his job is because, again, he sexually abused a child and then lied to everyone about it. Right? It is unbelievable. The church is requesting, among other things, that Robert Morris be honest about the fact that he began sexually abusing this girl when she was 12 and not in her early teens, as he said earlier. Not that that's any better. And they also want him to publicly apologize for what he did to her and what he did to the reputation of the church. And they want Robert Morris to stop saying something he has said repeatedly, which is, listen, the elders of the church all knew about the abuse and the girl's age, but they forgave me, and that's why I'm allowed to be a pastor here. They're like, we did not know what you did exactly, and we definitely did not know her age, so we want you to stop telling that lie. And so they're saying, if you want any chance of reconciliation and getting any of this money, those are the terms you have to agree with. And anyway, he's like, I don't have to do anything. You owe me. You signed the contract. So at this point, let him fight. Neither side comes out looking good in all this. This guy wasn't worth the salary even before the allegations came to light. The people who run Gateway Church were totally by this guy's side when he was merely a cruel, MAGA-loving bigot, and they fully deserve whatever drama he's causing them now. But it's look at this headline from one of the articles about this. This is from the Roy's report. Gateway Church rejects Robert Morris's demand for millions in benefits. Unbelievable that this dude, after what he did, is going back to the church and saying, yeah, so I did something to a little girl. Anyway, where's my check? You owe me. and this church and all the money that people give to this church, that should be in my pocket right now. Because I don't know, what's this dude going to do with that sort of money? I don't want to know. One other side note of here is that Gateway Church and Robert Morris are also in court separately from all this on the same side for a totally different reason. And I mentioned this the last time I did a video on this guy. They're asking the court to toss out a lawsuit that 4 church members who used to attend Gateway filed because they say Morris misused our tithe money, and he made a money-back guarantee in 2022 where he said, if you don't like the way we're spending your tithe money at this church, just ask for your money back and we'll give it to you. And they said, well, we don't like what he's doing with the money and we want it back. And the church was like, yeah, you're not getting your money back. They're literally in court fighting about that on the same side, Robert Morris and Gateway Church. So again, let him fight. So he lied when he said there was a money-back guarantee. He lied about assaulting this child. I don't know why. Maybe that's what Jesus taught him to do. That lawsuit is still ongoing, but this guy is asking for like millions and millions of dollars. The contract says you have to give me close to $1 million every year for the rest of my life. But if I die early, then you just got to keep giving that money to my wife until she dies. That's the church contract. That's like if you told me that the CEO of Apple had that contract, I'd be like, that's way too much money to give anybody. That's a ridiculous thing. This is the head of a nonprofit church who is making these demands. Utterly ridiculous. I don't know. Crazy story. All right, what questions we got here? Don't those contracts usually get voided when the guy does heinous crimes? I thought so. I'm sure they had some clause in there that said, like, yeah, but if the guy is arrested and charged and he's going to be in prison because of what he did to a little girl, maybe the financial package gets crossed out. It is also possible that because these are churches, they don't know enough about how these contracts work and they didn't go to the right people when they initially signed the contract. I assume megachurches are better at this now. But again, this is where you need a lawyer to sort through this stuff. I don't know who's legally in the right here. I just know ethically and optically, it seems like Robert Morris would be in the wrong, and who the hell is he to ask for all this money? But I don't know what the legal answer is going to be. But yeah, you would think there's some sort of clause that says if you do something crazy, we're not going to give you the benefits. So now it's even more clear. He was in it for the money, not for the ministry. Sure seems like it. I mean, he's not asking for like some golden cross to put around his neck. He's not asking them to give him a chance to preach every Christmas. He just wants the cash that he's going to run. I know someone pointed this out here in the comments, but like, what is his wife thinking at this point? Why does she even want this blood money at this point that he would only be getting because he had to leave the church? Why did he leave the church? Because of what he did to a little child. And his wife apparently is like, yeah, I'm good with that. Just give me the cash too. What better people to grift than those trained to trust a singular source of guidance for centuries? I think this is one of the worst things about what religion teaches people, that there are prophets or pastors or religious leaders that you could put your trust in, and they don't necessarily earn your trust. They are just granted trust by the very position that they are in, and that you should put your trust in them and you should trust them with your secrets. And you can just assume they're on the up and up. And then it doesn't matter to all these people how many stories there are of pastors behaving badly, of how many pastors get arrested. By the way, I see those stories every day of a pastor who gets arrested for doing X or Y, or who is going to jail for a long time because they were like hiding cameras in the church bathrooms or all sorts of crazy stuff. How many of those stories do you need to see before you at least accept the premise that maybe religion is not a virtue? That maybe trust has to be earned. Like, it doesn't matter what field you're in, trust can be broken, and you could trust people and they have a secret life you don't know about. That's possible. That happens everywhere. But I don't get why religious leaders get this unearned trust that they don't deserve, especially when it's not like Robert Morris slipped and fell ethically in the last 10 minutes. This happened like 40 years ago, and he just hid it from everybody that entire time. And it was only because of the courage of the survivor that we know any of this today. I mean, just to piggyback on what I just said, It's the same thing with the Republican Party too right now. Like, it is not unfair to compare the Republican Party to what is going on in a lot of these religious organizations where they just put their trust in Trump, and it doesn't matter what you show them. You could show them all the hypocrisy. You could show them that he's totally bullshitting them every time he opens his mouth, and none of them care because he's their Lord and Savior now. He can do no wrong. Just listen to what Carolyn Levitt says during her press conferences every day. They will never admit Trump said anything wrong, makes any mistakes, whatever. And how dare you question anything he says, right? If the media asks any actual questions, he attacks the media, and the rest of them attack the media. It's just how the Republican Party works, because they put their trust in a single individual. Meanwhile, you saw stories this week about like Biden was too old and he should have said it early. And pretty much every Democrat I know is like, yeah, we know he was old. I didn't vote for him because I love the guy. I voted for him because he wasn't Trump. Like, I hope this is what we learn from this. Like, Democratic leaders are not your saviors, and they can break your trust, and then you can get rid of them and vote for somebody else. But in the Republican Party, you go with the guy at the top of the poll. I genuinely don't know what's going to happen when Trump is gone eventually, which is because he'll be gone. No one else can just pretend to be him and just capture that magic, that spell he has cast over everyone in the party. I don't know what happens. And to that point in the comment here, would Robert Morris's wife even accept that money knowing what her husband did? Clearly, she's in on this. I haven't heard her say, I'm getting rid of my husband and it's horrible what he did. Until I read that story, I'm fully assuming she's on board with this. This is, by the way, also, while we're on the subject of politics, this is why no one should be like, oh, Melania Trump is secretly stealth. She's against him, or she doesn't really love Donald Trump. No, she's fully on board with him. Usha Vance is fully on board with what the Trump administration is doing. Do not give these people an out because you think secretly they can't possibly be on board with this. Unless you hear them speak out openly about what's wrong with these people, you have to assume they are all in the same camp. They are all horrible people.